just a quick introduction. So on who Engineers Ireland are. This is where we're based, up in Dublin in Clydes Road, but Engineers Ireland is a professional engineering body in Ireland. If you're new and not aware, we're established since 1835, and we're a multidisciplinary organisation, so covering all areas of engineering from civil to mechanical, biomedical to chemical. Over 25,000 members across the whole island of Ireland, and we're split up into different regions, and similarly with divisions to cover all those different areas. We're the sole body for awarding professional titles. We have 4 professional titles, including Chartered Engineer, and we like to call ourselves the professional home for engineers. So whether you're an international engineer or you're a student or an engineer professional yourself, hopefully you see Engineers Ireland as your professional home to support you on your engineering career. So some of the membership benefits, just the opportunity for you to network with many members across our regions, divisions, and societies. Opportunity to access our different reports and resources, such as our recent salary survey, which was just released a couple of weeks ago. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. Obviously, as a professional body, we want to encourage members to apply for a registered professional title. Like I mentioned, Chartered Engineer, we can really help them enhance their career prospects in the future. And of course, that also gives them international recognition and mobility to study abroad in many places. So yeah, so those are the points there, as I mentioned, and again, great opportunity and benefits. So how to become a member. So if you're not already a member of Engineers Ireland, so we have a website, engineersireland.ie, that you go on and register. And there's an application form that you can fill out. And again, it's a quick, straightforward process. The cost of membership. So if you are a student studying engineering, the membership is free. But if you are a professional, membership starts at €280. There are the options there. If you're a student, you don't need to yet provide the qualifications. But if you are a professional, we do need to get a verified copy of your engineering qualification, and there's different ways that you can get that verified. Once that all comes in, then obviously that goes to our membership and qualification board, who will review that, and obviously an opportunity for you then to become a member of Engineers Ireland. Those who are already a member, you probably will be aware of the opportunity to obviously claim this webinar as part of your CPD. So on your profile, now you can obviously go to My CPD and upload this 1 hour webinar. And again, it's important that you keep this up to date on a regular basis in order to keep your 35 hours, as we ask all our members to do. So obviously, if there's any questions about Engineers Ireland membership or anything, do feel free to contact us. That's our email there and our phone number. And again, check our website, which has loads of information and resources for you. But of course, also feel free to get in touch with me, myself. That's my email details there. And I would obviously welcome any questions that you do have also. So without any further ado, I'll now pass on to Rosangela, who's a TUS Limerick student ambassador and actual renewable engineering student, who will be the host for this evening's webinar. So take it away, Rosa, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Pierre. Good evening, everyone. You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you all here. My name is Rosangela, as you may have already heard. And yes, I'm a renewable and electrical energy engineering student at TUS, and I'll be hosting this Women in Engineering webinar. When I started organizing this event, I wanted to highlight the importance of women's representation in engineering, mostly the female empowerment, and at the same time, the many challenges that we may face. And with that said, I would like to introduce you to our 4 amazing speakers. First of all, Amy Lane, Electrical Engineering Manager at Kirby Group; Rahim Hamid, Project Manager at Rogers & Bretton; Orla Costello, Facilities Engineering Manager at Johnson & Johnson Vision Care; and Alia Karim, Postgraduate Researcher at TUS Limerick. With further ado, I welcome Amy Lane too.
Perfect, thanks Rosa. Right, so guys, my name's Amy Lane. I'm the electrical engineering manager here in Kirby's. And I suppose what I'm going to do today is just run through a little bit of my background, how I got into it, and little snippets and bits of advice that I'd like to share. So I'll run through it. I think the order that we're using today is we get to the end of each of the presentations, and you can ask your questions at that point. So just so you don't forget, like me, your questions as we run through it, maybe have a bit of paper next to you and a pen, scribble them down, and you can get them over to us then at the end. So, right. Again, I'm recapping here, but my name's Amy Lane. I'm electrical engineering manager in Kirby's. We're a construction company. I completed my degree back in 2010 from MTU. It was CIT at that time when I graduated. Back in 2010, I'm probably, none of you can remember back that far, but we were going through a recession here in Ireland. So I must have handed out close to 100 CVs before I decided Ireland wasn't going to happen for me. I did get offered a job from a company called Kentech at the time, but they were going to send me to outer Mongolia and standard issue with a shovel to dig yourself out of the snow in the morning. So I said, nope, that's not for me. And I got on a plane and I went to Australia. I didn't have a job secured. And at 21, I don't think I was too worried about a job either at that point. But after I'd done a bit of farm work and bar work, I landed a job with Worley Parsons. They're a design consultant in Australia. They're actually world renowned now. They're in America. They're in Saudi Arabia. They're everywhere really, but they're named Worley now, and they bought out Jacobs over in Australia there recently. So I spent 6-7 years with them, and that was mainly in the oil and gas industry, a bit of refineries, and I did a bit of wastewater treatment plants as well there. In 2017, I decided to move to EDC. They're a remote energy provider, so it was for Aboriginal communities, generator power, gas turbines. They would have powered mine sites, so anywhere that was off the grid. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Australia, but there's a town called Broome, and it's in the northwest section of Australia. It's a large enough town. I think there's 20,000 people, 25,000 people, so a sizable town. And you'd be surprised to know that that town is not on the main grid in Australia. So how they get their power, it's all gas turbines, and they truck the gas in. It's not piped in. 3 trucks every day of gas is how they support that village or town. It's not a village, it is a town. It's 25,000. When they have the roads flood as well up there, believe it or not, they flood, the trucks can't get up, and then they rely on trucking diesel down from the north. So you'd never think this day and age that that's how they're getting power. They're powering towns in, first world countries, but there. After that, it was time for me to move home. I came back to Ireland in 2018, and in January 2019, I started with Dornan main contractor as well. And I stayed there 3 years. Really enjoyed the contractor position because I'd done the design consultancy, I had done the client seat, and then it was time for me to try the contractor. So I moved over to Kirby's last year, again sticking with the contractor. I will be staying on the contractor seat. I've really enjoyed it, and I think the reason for that is it's something different every day. We really complete the design. You get a concept or a design at a certain phase from the consultancy, and then you work it all the way through and you see it being finished. So previous projects, you can see oil and gas, refineries, water plant over in Australia, remote power generation, and then since coming back, it's been mainly data centers and pharmaceutical plants that we've been building. My home life as well. I have a fiance and 3 children at home, so busy in work and busy at home. Um, Look, I suppose the reason I'm sharing this is because when I was starting out back in 2010, when I was lashing out hundreds of CVs, I wasn't necessarily thinking about what industry I was going into, what job I was taking, and it could have went very differently for me. I could have picked the wrong one. I could have landed in the wrong place, and I've seen it happening to grads previous to this, where they think they're getting a job in one sector or one area, and 2 years later they realize, no, this isn't what I wanted or what I signed up for. But it does become too late to kind of change your mind at a certain period. Otherwise, you're going back to the bottom of the ladder again, which nobody wants to do. So I suppose what I want to go through is there's a few different seats. You can sit on the client side. You can sit for the consultancy. So the client, you're checking the design, you're making sure that the project is progressing correctly. So you're overseeing both the consultant and the contractor. You could also go into the maintenance part, where you're maintaining a plant and ensuring that it's running correctly, and that any maintenance or upgrades that need to be done, you're overseeing. You can go into the consultancy, where you're mainly based in an office and you're looking after the design of the project. So it's very theoretical. You don't really look into, is it buildable as such? You get the design down and you get it out to the contractor. And then you have the contractor, which is where I'm sat at the moment. We get the design from the consultant and we make it work, and we build it and we hand it back to the client. The thing about engineering degrees are they're very transferable. You can use them in any country. You can travel with them, which is different to a lot of other professions. You go into medicine, nursing, even electricians. You move countries, you have to do exams, tests, there's transfer papers. But I was lucky enough, with engineering, I went over to Australia and I got to see a huge amount of Australia for free on my employer's pocket, because they'd send me to all these lovely places. You can see me down there getting scorched by the sun. And you've got the super pit actually in Kalgoorlie. It's the biggest open pit in the Southern Hemisphere, which is quite impressive. You've got dump trucks in that pit the size of 3-story buildings, but they look like ants when you're looking down into the pit. So it's huge, can be seen from space. Views on women in engineering, and I'm nearing the end now, guys. So I suppose my views on it are, it is great to see more women in the workplace, but unfortunately, women in the workplace has become a bit of a buzzword, and I suppose that comes with some bad aspects as well. So we need to ensure that we don't allow this to damage our credibility. We need to ensure that we don't give others a reason to say they only got it because they're a woman. And if you see this happening, if you see people getting things that they don't necessarily deserve or they haven't worked for, you need to kind of put up your hand and say it, or you need to not accept things for the sake of it. But also you need to work really hard. And unfortunately, us as women, you have to work that little bit harder to ensure that no one gets to say that, So they would be my views on engineering, or women in engineering. And hopefully they will align with the other ladies on the panel, but we'll see after this. And that's me. Thank you, guys. Cheers for listening. I'm going to stop sharing now and hand back to Rosa.
Thank you so much, Amy. Really nice presentation. Now I give space to Rahima, project manager for Sunbeam.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. Rahima Ahmed, I'm a civil engineer by profession, and I'm a project manager at Rogers van Ruyden. And I'm sorry, this is a presentation I did before, so it has all this. I have a 5-month-old, so I didn't have time to do another presentation. But anyway, I was born in Kenya, moved to Turkey, moved to Kenya again, and moved to Hungary, and then I moved to Ireland. And unfortunately, fortunately, I was lucky enough, I didn't do high school full years. So I did 5th and 6th year only. I did it in Utrecht, in Limerick, and then I went straight to college and did civil engineering. Again, I was the only lady in my engineering class, but that's okay. It was good. And then I joined Engineers Island when I was first year of college, I became a committee member, and I was actually the youngest committee member of the Thomond region. So through Engineers Island, I got to meet different people. I got to do different things, like I got to go to different schools, like to talk to students about engineering and attend meetings with people who I learned so much from. I did a lot of site visits. So I really connected with so many people, and that's where I created my connections. And then I was the co-founder of Young Engineers Society, kind of like it was already founded. I was just handed to lead it and became the first chairperson. And then after college, so I did all that while I was in college, and after college I joined Punch Consulting Engineers before I graduated. I finished college in May and I joined in September as a BIM technician. I graduated in 2020 again in November. So I joined September and graduated in November. And then I was awarded the inaugural Engineering Engagement Award again, end of 2020. And that opened few more doors for me. Like I was in the newspaper, I was doing interviews, I was giving more talk shows and all, and a lot of tweets and all. And then in May 2021, I moved to Tanzania. I stayed there till March. I came back to Ireland. And as I was looking for a job, I did a lot of interviews, which I didn't, well, not really a lot, I did only 2. I didn't get the job. And then my high school teacher, who I was still talking to, she asked me if I was back in Ireland, and that his brother was asking about me if I could join the company, because we met in 2017, and that's the thing about creating connections, is once you create connections, they are already there. So even if maybe you might not be talking to people for a few years, but they remember you, they know you, and they see my like everything that I do career-wise on LinkedIn. So he liked me to join his company. Of course, even if it's because he knew my work, he knew what I was doing, and he saw me in different places before. And that's why he was like, can we ask her to join our company if he would like that? And it wasn't offered to me directly. I had to go to do the interviews. I had to do the whole process again as everyone else, because the good thing about our company is they just don't take someone because they know someone. They literally have to do an interview with you. They have to see your ability, and you're given probation time and all of that. And yeah, I joined the company when I was 18 weeks pregnant. One thing I added that there because I know a lot of people think that when you're pregnant or when you're an engineer, you can't be pregnant, but like you basically, it stops your career from moving. It doesn't, because I was pregnant and they still offered me a job, and I was going to site when I was probably 32 weeks pregnant, 34 weeks pregnant. And well, obviously they're going to take care of me when I'm at site, and I was getting the question every time, like, do you want to sit down? Do you want to sit down? But that's okay. It's because they cared, and that's good. And so, yeah, I worked at Rogers and Royden for probably 4 months before I went for my maternity leave. And I came back. Well, those are my directors, but also like my mentors are the people who they guide me every day. And I'm the only lady at the project manager department in our Limerick office, which it's something that I'm learning so much from them. They never make me feel like, oh, you're the only lady, so you should not get involved. They involve me in everything. They make sure I take part in everything, and they don't treat me any different. The only thing that they make it a bit different is if you need anything, and if you think you're not being treated nice, you just say it out, because they're men and they're around men. So sometimes they might not treat you like nicely. And we know there's words which men can say which can offend ladies and not offend men. Like, so that's the only special place that they put it there, which it has never happened. And I'm learning so much from them. Actually, I was 9 months pregnant in that picture, so I look like a wardrobe. That's okay. Just let me enjoy that time at that time. But yeah, my advice is create your own path, put in the work, because as much as a lot of people will tell you that you just got a job in that company because you're a woman, there is so many company, I can tell you 90% of the company or more don't allow you to work in a place just because the one mistake that you can make in a company can ruin the whole company reputation. So there's so many places that won't allow you to be there just because you're a lady. So put in the work so that you can show them how good you are, not because you're a lady. And there's so many times where you have to put in extra hard because you're a lady to show them that you can do more than someone else. And that's okay, because you are creating your brand name, like yourself, like you're branding yourself, like she's a hardworking person. She knows what she's doing. She's knowledgeable, she's intelligent, and that's all. Second is, don't limit your dream. Don't let anyone tell you like, oh, you're a lady, you can't do this, you're a lady. There is nothing that you can't do if you put your mind and your effort into it. If you want something and you think you're going to be good at it, do it, and no one should stop you. Raise your head high. Anywhere you go, there will be places where you go and people will want to limit you, will want to stop you from talking, will want to build a wall in front of you like you are invisible. Raise your head high and pass through that and tell them like, I'm here, I need this, I need this. And if anyone offends you, tell them directly, be nice, be kind, but tell them directly like, listen, you're crossing my boundary and all of this. Like, be straightforward and raise your head high. Don't ever let anyone step on you. And another thing is, go out and create connections, as much connections as you can. And I think you have heard this by now. There's so many jobs which you won't get unless you are connected. And that doesn't mean people connect you to the company in a way like, or they will say, oh, that's my friend or something. No, it basically means people will know about you. If someone in a company asks, we want a project manager, and someone will be like, oh, I know Rahima from this company, maybe she'll be interested. Email, this is her email or something. That's how you create connections. So people will say your name when opportunities come because they have seen you somewhere, because they have known you, because they have met you already. So and that's it. Like, don't let anyone limit you as a lady. And thank you. I think I went very fast, but sorry.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Rahim. Now we welcome Orla Costello, which is Facilities Engineering Manager at Johnson & Johnson Patient Care.
Thanks, Rosa. So unlike the rest of the very prepared presenters this evening, I don't have a presentation ready. So you're just going to have to listen to me rabbit on for a few minutes, I'm afraid. So I'm the Facilities Engineering Manager in Johnson & Johnson Vision Care. I'm in charge of what we call hard services. So that's the supply of anything from water, electricity, compressed air, processed gases, drains, sewage, all that sort of thing for the plant. It's an exciting job, sometimes exciting in the wrong way. There's been times when I could do with a little bit less excitement, because when you're in facilities, when something goes wrong, it doesn't just take down part of the plant or one line or whatever. You know, we go for broke. We take down the whole lot. You know, we don't like doing things by halves, which adds a little bit of fun and joy into the life. So look, I mean, an awful lot of my day is spent in meetings, but I also do a fair bit of walking. Just in my normal day, I get 9,000 or 10,000 steps in a day without even trying. It's about 1.5 kilometers round trip to my team's office from where I am. So there's a lot of movement around the place. I didn't actually realize my job existed. And, you know, I've been an engineer for 20 years. When I was in college, I didn't realize that most of the jobs I ended up doing existed. And so it was a bit of a shock to me when I turned up. I went to UCD for 4 years, ended up the Bachelor of Engineering in Mechanical. But the reason I got into engineering was because I loved maths and physics and tech drawing, and engineering seemed to be the most sensible way to go ahead. Plus, I reckon my tech drawing teacher brainwashed me, because he had 3 of us did tech drawing for the Leaving Cert back in 1998, and all of us ended up in engineering or architecture. So he had 100% success rate with us. You know, I find challenges and successes is kind of an interesting one. I've changed industries a lot over the 20 years. I started off working in a steelworks in Scunthorpe, And Scunthorpe is exactly the kind of town it sounds like. In one memorable encounter, and this has nothing to do with engineering, but it does kind of describe the sort of place it was. I told my dad, he was over visiting me, and I was working one of the days that he was over. So he went into one of the local pubs to get his lunch, and I said, when you come out of the pub, make sure you don't turn left, make sure you turn right. And of course, my dad, being the wonderful direction person that he is, turned left. And he headed up the road where there were some very friendly ladies there, all inviting him in for tea, along about a row of about 10 or 12 houses. Now, thankfully, he didn't go in, but I then had the joy of explaining to my dad what a prostitute was. So, you know, this was not a fun conversation to be having in my early 20s. After that, we agreed he would take extra care when he was turning out of whichever pub I sent him to for lunch. But, you know, I had some great times in Scunthorpe. One of the major things I remember, and it colours me to this day, I was working in one of their mills. I was the only woman among 300 men, and there was no ladies' toilet. So they put in a toilet into a broom cupboard, and that was what I used. The only problem was at the other end of the mill, and it took about a 15-minute walk to get to the bathroom. So I ended up just not going to the bathroom at work. And because of that, to this day, whenever I go on an interview, I make sure to ask the interviewer, the technical interviewer, could I use the bathroom? Because if I ask the nice person at security, or the admin assistant who's there at the desk, or the HR person, which is usually a woman, they'll know exactly where the bathroom is. If my potential manager doesn't know where the ladies is, I'm really not interested in working for them, because they're usually right beside the men's, but not always. And it's a really good test to give somebody. So I started off, like, steel was tough, right? Steel was a pretty tough environment. I would walk into technicians' offices, and you know, the walls would be papered with girly calendars that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. You know, there was different kind of attitudes, and kind of a general consensus that, you know, women shouldn't be in the steelworks, that they shouldn't be working there. You know, there was that kind of feeling. Not everybody, but enough people. And I do remember a manager sitting me down one day and telling me I had to choose between having a career or having a family. You know, now over the last 20 years, I've seen some massive changes. That kind of conversation would be in no way acceptable today, which I'm so happy with. And that kind of calendar display, shall we say, would in no way be acceptable today, right? That is something I've seen a major change in over the last 20 years. I've also seen a more acceptance of women in the workplace. And I think part of it's because I've changed industries. I now work in pharma and med devices, but even when I was working in food, when I moved back to Ireland, I got married, and then I dragged my husband back to Ireland. He's English. That was 9 years ago. He's almost getting used to it at this point. But when I moved back to Ireland, I didn't actually realize how much of a medtech and pharma industry there was in this country. But I've been kind of in and out of medtech and pharma since then. And those industries tend to have more women in them in general than the heavier, older industries like oil and gas, steel, that kind of thing. And if you have more women in the organization in general, even if they're not in the engineering department or the department you're in, then it makes it easier for all the women around the place, so that you might be the only female engineer, but you're not the only woman. And you can build up a network and a support and all the rest of it. Now, when I was in my 20s and I came out of college, I was very strongly in the I can do whatever a man does and I can do it better camp. And, you know, I set out proving that, and I just made myself sick, basically. So I wouldn't advise it. I'd advise being yourself. I'd advise working to your strengths, and I'd advise working hard, absolutely. But if you've gotten a job, then don't let anyone tell you you've got it because of your gender. You know, when I was in my 20s, I was adamantly against quotas and any kind of forced diversity on interview panels and all the rest of it. But then as I started graduating up through the ranks, I suppose, of any organization, you start seeing fewer and fewer women being promoted, you know, being or even going after those promotions. And there are some fascinating statistics out there that, you know, a man will apply for a new job when he fulfills about 60% of the requirements. A woman will wait until she has 100%. And so I started challenging myself on that, and I started applying for a job that I thought looked interesting, regardless of whether I felt I fulfilled the requirements or not. You know, I started looking around and I could see CVs that I would read and I'd say, like, you know, this person is great, why aren't we interviewing them? And it'd be something like, oh, we don't think they fit the culture, or you know, there's something just not quite right about it. It doesn't read true, or nothing obvious. No one ever came out and said we're not hiring her because she's a woman. But you know, there's these subtle things. So I do think that telling people that they need to have a diverse interview panel is hugely important. Now, you don't get a job in engineering unless you're able to do the job. You know, it's like previous speakers have alluded to the fact that you do have to work hard. You do have to prove yourself. Every day you're going in and you're proving yourself. But realistically, we're good at our jobs. We can do our jobs. We know really well how to be good engineers. And you can stand on that, and you can just guarantee yourself that if there was any doubt as to whether you were going to be a good engineer or not, you wouldn't have survived this far. I don't care how far into your career you are. I don't care how far into your course you are. You know yourself, you've survived it this long, you're going to be a good engineer because you've put too much into it to do otherwise. So have confidence in yourself. Don't, and I'm going to use words that may offend some people, so, you know, deal with it. But don't let the bastards knock you down, all right? They do it to enough. You can do better. You can rise above them. You can say, screw you, we're here, and we're going to stay, and we're good at what we do. All right, I'll pass you on to the next person now and stop capital. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. That was really interesting. Now I welcome Alia, postgraduate researcher at TS Limerick.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Alia, and I'll just start on how just introducing myself for a bit. So I'm from Malaysia, from the northern of Malaysia, but I moved around a lot. So before this, I went to school in the US for a bit. In Arizona, and then I moved back to Malaysia to finish high school and college. And now currently I'm in Athlone, Ireland. And I moved here around 4 years ago. So I did my bachelor's in applied physics in Petronas University. So that was in 2015 till I graduated during COVID. So it was really tough, but I managed. And then currently I'm doing my PhD in polymer engineering in TUS Athlone, and little small town called Athlone. So, and before I came here, I worked for a bit in Clarivate and as product support representative. And during my college years, I was working in a startup for a bit as an operator in Forge Factory. So it's a 3D printing company. So we provide services to students for their final year projects. So we printed their projects basically. And then before I worked in Clarivate, I was working as a research assistant a couple of times during college and after in my own university. And I did my internship here in Ireland before coming back to Malaysia to finish my final year. And so currently I'll show you a bit what I do. It's a bit boring, but so this is basically what I do is I do research. So what I do is to degrade low density polyethylene. So I focus mostly on polyethylene. So we're trying to find solutions to degrade it because I know right now we know it's a problem of plastics around the world, you know, and we try to recycle it, but it's better to find solution for the long run. So that's what we're trying to do. So these are kind of my team in a way. So we basically look for different solutions for it. And I did several volunteering in few organizations throughout my studies. So I was in Malaysian Student Association of Ireland for a bit in public relations, and currently I'm one of the student council in RunEU for TUS Athlone. And I was working for a bit as engineering instructor for the for CTYI. For basically advanced kids and DCU. they came over to Athlone, and I was in the Google Developer Student Club in my college in Malaysia, as well as we organized. I was part of the committee for TEDx in my university back home in Malaysia. So how did I got into engineering is basically, I really like to build stuff back when I was young. So I wanted to be a scientist, and I really like to just, pick things apart basically. And my dad was an engineer, so he would bring me around and show his workplace, and I just like love the idea of building things and being a part of something that is that you can create, and that's how I got into engineering. And I know it's really tough because of the cultural differences. So back in Malaysia, there weren't really much opportunity for me to be involved in a lot of the societies, engineering societies, because I'll just go to this because it's hard. Mostly it's male dominated, and because of the cultural perspective, it's mostly men are always in engineering, women can't really be in it because we can't really do anything. That's what they mentioned. So they told me that. So I was mostly do it because I really love it, and also because out of spite during school, if I'm being honest. But in the end, it's mostly because I'm like I like to be a part of the building things, and it just out of interest mostly. And just a little advice, I guess, is that you have to be confident in yourself, and it's hard to be in like if you feel it's hard basically to be in a place where you don't feel appreciated, and you always listen to the stigma where, oh, it's not for you, it's not for women, it's like women are not supposed to be in a place where like where heavy machineries or whatever it is. But it's really it's not true at all. You can actually do it, and I mean, of course you need the right skills and you need the right people to lead you to that. But in the end, it's not really, it's like you have to break the stigma. Basically, don't listen to them because I've went through it so many times. Because when I was doing my bachelor's in applied physics, I was the only woman there, and dealing with 12 other men telling you you're wrong is always demotivating. But in the end, you just have to push through and keep enjoying it, and what you do, keep learning everything like that you can get. Use your resources around you. Keep connected with people, I think, and also keep on learning and choose the path that you like. There's a lot of engineering path out there, and you have to choose something that you really enjoy and really like, because you can end up in some engineering path and then turn out it's not for you. But again, trial and error, in the end, you always learn something in the end. And of course, support one another. And I know it can be hard. I've been in an environment where there's me only and 2 women and the rest are all male, and they're not really supportive because it feels like a competition. But you have to remember, you're here all for a reason, and you all made it there. So it's like you always have to remember to support each other, especially when you're the minority in some way. So that's all some kind of advice that I can get. And also, don't forget to ask for help. That's that's something that always people forget. I think you always have to ask for help. Just don't just always ask if you don't know anything. And yeah, just that's all really. I think that I can give some advice from my experiences. So yeah, that's all I can say. Mostly everyone else covered what I want to say, but yeah, so that's all. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alia. Thank you to all the speakers for those really interesting presentations, really useful information and such a wide variety of backgrounds and experiences. Also extremely valuable advice that I'm sure not only me will receive and use as a guide for our own future paths, but many people will as well. Now, if you let me move on to the more of like panel section of this webinar. talking to Rahima and looking back at your presentation and your own experiences, considering the phrase, engineering is not a ladylike career, has there been any time that you felt underestimated or left behind on a project or assignment because of it? And how did you deal with this situation?
I said there, like when I was in college, I was the only lady in my classroom. And when I first joined, most of them looked at me like I was in the wrong class. And obviously I was like, no, I'm not in the wrong class. Maybe any of you might be, but I'm in the right class. And then so at first, probably the first few weeks, few months of college, they were not talking to me much, and they were not cooperating with me because they didn't know my ability or anything. And then when we were doing quizzes and all of that, I was always the top student. So then afterwards, that's when I became friends with them, and they were like, we were always doing projects together and assignments together and all. But I had they had to see how good I was before they could be friends with me. So all of them were friends with each other, but for me, they were just not that much. And also, I do go to places where maybe like it's a site visit or somewhere, and a lot of people will look at me. So first of all, you have to realize I'm not only a lady, but I'm a Muslim, I'm African, and I'm Arab. So it's something that I think they don't expect ladies to be engineers in that aspect, like African ladies or Arab ladies or Muslim ladies. And also, I have gone places where people don't treat me very nicely until they hear what comes out from my mouth. And I think I remember hearing this from one motivational speaker who said, whenever you talk is when you talk is when you brand yourself. And that's true. That's like when people hear me talking like my ideas, or whenever I speak, or whenever I talk about my ideas, or like my intelligence capacity, probably that's when people give me my respect, or that's when people treat me nicely. And when it comes to men, I think people will be friends with them, and they don't really care if you're stupid or not, or if you're intelligent or not. But with ladies, when it comes to engineering, a lot of the time people are looking at you like, how intelligent are you? So that's why I always say, like, if you're good at something, be good at it, and always show how good you are. Like, prove it to them that, as Ola said, don't do things that will hurt you just because, or like for me to go to a construction site and start carrying bricks or doing something, if I'm not capable to do that just because I want to show men, no. Like, you are a lady, and don't put the feminine side of you away just because you want to fit in a masculine world. Like, I am a project manager and I have the feminine side of me, and even in my company, I get treated like the female that I am. And when it comes to projects, we deal with it together. But when like, in terms of respect, in terms of everything, I don't let anyone disrespect me because I'm a female, or just to fit in a masculine word, like, oh, that's okay if you say that bad word because men say it to each other. No, I don't do that. So I always put my female, I'm a female first before I'm an engineer. So I never let anyone take it out from me. And then I prove myself to people like I am good. I'm not very hesitant. I'm not very quick to prove it to people. I love proving people wrong. I really do it. Like, whenever I go to places and people look at me like, who is this stupid girl in here? Like, and I'm short, so they always look at me like, oh, who is that stupid short girl? But I usually just smile at people and don't care or anything. And then I love it when they are proven wrong, when I start to speak and they're like, oh, she's intelligent. So always just be you, be yourself, and don't let anyone intimidate you or make you feel small just because you're a female. Like,
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Actually, I think at some point in our own careers, everyone must have felt like we had to prove that we are intelligent or as valuable as they are. And yeah, it happens. So thank you so much for your answer. Now I'd like to ask Orla if, considering what you were talking about in your own presentation and your experiences, in the past. Would you please mention one of the moments that maybe during a project in which you have found the best and like work experiences as an engineer? Maybe something that you really enjoyed, and also at the same time another experience that you didn't like as much and the impact it had on you.
Absolutely. And funnily enough, I can tie both of those up in the one project. So I was working as part of a cold drawn tube project in Corby, which is another highlight of places to visit in England. That was sarcasm there, just in case no one picked it up. So look, we had 9 vats of different chemicals. They each held 25,000 liters of varying degrees of nastiness, basically. But there was one in particular that was quite dangerous if it wasn't handled right, and it was our phosphoric acid bath. And we had to add an additive called H7004. I remember this, it was 15 years ago this happened, and I still remember these details into it. But if you added too little, the process wouldn't work. And if you added too much, it produced phosphorus gas. Now, phosphorus gas kills people quite quickly, just as an aside, and there isn't actually a safe working limit on it. It is one of those substances that is just not safe to be around humans at all. So we have these 9 vats in a row. They're fairly big, 25,000 liters. We have, we were in month 6 of a year-long ramp up at this point. So we had kind of SOPs in place, we had procedures, we had all that kind of thing. But really, when it came to the chemicals, it was down to myself and my boss who managed them. And the reason I got that responsibility was because I did chemistry in the Leaving Cert, and that was the closest anyone on the team had for any sort of chemical qualification. And I was able to explain what a titration was to the extent that our MD could understand it. I think that was the second reason I got that particular job. So we had everything in place. And we had reasonable controls around these things. We got the H7004 delivered in. It was stored in a specific place. Only certain people were allowed to have access to it, all that. And myself and my boss used to take it in turns for doing cover at the weekend, so that if there was a question or a problem, they'd ring one or the other of us. So this weekend I was at home, and my boss's wife was in a very bad car accident. So he rang me and he said, look, Jane's in hospital. And I was like, yeah, fine, I'll answer the phone if they need me, no bother. I got a phone call at about 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night, because it was a 24/7 operation. And they were saying that they'd run out of H7004, that the process was breaking down, and could they open up the new IBC that was in the pack, that was in the bund. And I said, yeah, sure, just check it is 7004 and not something else that's randomly put in there. Got a phone call back an hour later saying there's brown gas coming out. I think we need to evacuate. And I said, what the hell are you doing talking to me? Get out of there. There might have been a few more 4-letter words put into that sentence when I said it at the time. There was 80 people in that plant. They took it on my go-ahead to use that chemical. The company had delivered the wrong chemical, and nobody on site would have known that. It would have been myself or my boss that would have recognized that. So that was a decision that I made that could have killed 80 people, because even in the large area that they were in, phosphorus gas can kill at quite low levels. So that was a terrifying few days for me. It took, I was flying back into England anyway, about 12 hours after I got the first phone call. I was tearing up the motorway trying to get onto site and figure out what had gone wrong, where it had happened. It was awful. It was really awful. What I learned from that was to become far more detail orientated when it comes to safety. I am not naturally a details person. I like getting the system right. I like making sure people know what they've done. But when it comes to kind of like the finishing off of a project or the detail or things like that, I'm not a finisher. When you get to do those Myers-Briggs tests and all the rest of it, and you have these wonderful people who can tick every box, who dot every I, cross every T, and I love having them on my team because they fill a gap that I've got. But for that project, I went over everything with a fine-tooth comb. We walked through what had happened. We walked through every single process. We got the delivery company in, we got the manufacturer in. We had like a solid week of determining what had gone wrong, where it had gone wrong, and how do we never let this happen again. And it was really tough. It was really hard standing there kind of going, we don't understand how this happened. It was a sign-off mistake in the delivery warehouse. In the end, we found it down to, but we didn't have the right people on site, and we didn't have enough people who knew what they were looking for to be able to make that decision. Now, if it was here now, and you know, smartphones are a lot more available these days, I would have just said, take a picture and send it over to me. But 15 years ago, not everybody had a phone that would take cameras and stuff. So that was probably my worst day in my working career. The best day was when we turned around after a year. We had started off the ramp up producing 20 tons of steel a day, and we got it then to doing 200 tons in 24 hours, and then we got it to 200 tons in 16 hours. So we managed to cut back to 2 shifts. That was probably one of the best experiences that I can go to, because that was my first baby kind of thing. That was my first major project that I took on and pushed through right from the start, and did everything and organized it and trained up operators and trained up techs, and I knew that place like the back of my hand. I could and did walk it in my sleep at times, because you did those long days and it was so tiring and all the rest of it. But that satisfaction of coming at the end of it, and you know, you come through all the obstacles, you come through all the roadworks, you come through everything, and you turn around at the end and you just recognize how far you've come, and you've recognized that all those problems you've solved, everything, it just all comes together. And when you're feeling excited about something like that, that's when you realize, you know, crap, I really am an engineer. You know, this is the stuff that gets me going. This is the stuff that I live for. So that's me for now, Rosa.
Perfect. Yes, I guess we can find the good and the bad in most of our own experiences and try to learn from those as well, to include them in done. Yes. Perfect. So, Amy, according to what you said in your own experiences, you're traveling in different companies, which one do you consider was one of the greatest challenges you have faced throughout your career? And would you like to have done anything different to change it, maybe?
Okay, thanks, Rosa. Yeah, I can answer that. So my answer might shock people, because I've had really challenging days technically, and I have cried. I've got into that bathroom and cried. But the biggest challenge that I've encountered really would be management of work-life balance. I got pregnant on my graduate program. So I was 23 when I got pregnant, and I was 24 when we had our first baby in Australia, away from my family, in a job where I was given probably 150%. And that's where the panic sets in. You know, how the hell am I going to juggle all this? I used to work really hard as a graduate. I used to be the first person in, the last person to leave, you know, and that was part of my routine. You know, at least if they can see me putting in this much effort, they know I'm good. But having to turn around and say, hey guys, I'm pregnant and I'm going to have to take a bit of leave. That was a huge struggle for me. And then balancing it once I got back. And I suppose, look, I'm 13 years graduated now, and I can say I think I only got a handle on that in the last year, and how to prioritize and when to prioritize. And I think if I could share anything with you here on the call, it would be, don't sweat it. Things will work out. And instead of giving things 50% effort all the time, because you can't give everything 100%, but what you can do is, well, what I do and how it best works for me now is, when I'm at work, I give it 100%. When I'm at home, I give that 100%, and I switch off from both when I'm in each area. I suppose that might sound a bit terrible to some people, that I don't give my kids much when I'm at work. I don't need to. They're in school now. They're being looked after by their childminder. I give work 100% when I'm there. When I'm at home, I switch off my phone, I switch off the laptop, and I give my family 100%. But that was definitely my biggest challenge. And my eldest is, she's 10 now. So it's taken me 10 years to get a handle on that. There's another 2 came after her. And I would say whether it's kids, partners, family, anything, you have to manage your work-life balance, because if you don't, it can very quickly get overwhelming for you. So I think that has been my biggest challenge. Definitely. Thanks, Rosa.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Cheers.
Good. Now, Alia, based on my own experience and inspirations, my dad's also an engineer, and that's basically how I got into engineering as well. Also, I'm from Peru, and there's a lot of biodiversity and nature around there. And I wonder, looking back before involving yourself in the sector, why did you decide to become an engineer? And did you have someone to look up to or inspire you? Why engineering in particular?
Well, I think mostly because I'm mostly surrounded by my dad and his friends. They were all engineers. They were working in Intel, so they would always talk about it. And I'm generally just a curious person, so I would just like ask around a lot, and then I just got more interested. And back then, I think my parents always watch like documentaries, and I love space, or space stuff. And so I'm like, how do I get there? How do I get to build stuff? And in the end, I come to learn that I also love mathematics and physics. So I was a huge nerd back then. So that's what happened. I think that's what inspired me. Mostly just how passionate they are when they're working, and when they were, when I visit, like if we do visit school visits in companies, and my dad brought us around, so I just see how passionate they are when they were working. So it's, as well as like when I saw, I know back then it wasn't much women in the industry, so when I saw a few of them, and got more inspired to see, how do you get there? How can women get into the field? And especially back where I'm from, Malaysia, it's like very different how it is. Not much incentives and not much encouragement for women to join engineering. It's a lot of doctors and a lot of lawyers, but not many that I heard from that become scientists are women. So I'm really thankful that there are more now, but back then that's what mostly inspired me. Like, oh, they can actually, if they can get into the industry and they can actually get into the dirty work and just do all of that, why can't I do that as well? So that's one of the, that's what's also the my interest. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that's what inspired me. Yeah, so that's how I got into engineering, and also because I'm a huge nerd. That's all.
Perfect. Now, one last question that for all of you, would there be one word or sentence in which you could describe the theme of International Women's Day 2023? Where do you want to see greater equality in engineering?
I think we need to see more women engineers, like not because, like so that we can join, like support each other and all, like because there's very few of us where, I think Ola said this in other words, but basically is you need to join the table in order to get your idea across. So if you're outside the table, then no one is going to listen. I know a lot of you are scared to become to come into engineering because you think like this is it's like it's how do I put it? It's a male dominated career, and so you feel like, oh, I'm not going to be treated right, I'm not going to be treated like a lady, I'm going to be like, how you always going to be at the bottom and all of that. But you won't be able to change that if you're outside the engineering world. Like you need to join the engineering table and be able to speak and be able to bring your ideas on the table and be able to stand up for what you want or for something, for other women, support each other, and at the same time give your idea or like give your point across and all that, so that people can prioritize us more and people can respect us more as women in engineering. So we need more ladies in our world, so that it can be normal, so that not people will see like, oh, why like we have few ladies more than men. But if we're all of us, like if there's a lot of ladies, like if let's say 40% ladies, 50% men, then it won't make we won't be treated differently. We'll just be treated like normal because it's a high percentage. Like,
Look, we need more women in engineering. There are some really good business case basis for that. The more diverse a view you have solving a problem, the better solution you come out with. So when you just have all the engineers in a company that look the same, come from the same background, have the same life experiences, you don't get as good problem solving happening as you do when you have a more diverse group. The other thing is that we're currently at 12% in Ireland of women in engineering. 30% is the tipping point. 30% is when we start getting people thinking it's more equal. At the minute, we really obviously stand out. It's worse if you're technicians. For technicians, engineering technicians is 2% are women. And we're denying, half the population a really good career, or we're kind of persuading them not to go down this route. There's things that I've seen in common with all the female engineers I've come across. We tend to be a bit stubborn. We tend to be really good at what we do. We tend to have that drive to push through. And I'm not saying male engineers don't have it, but like in male engineers, you tend to get the usual up and down of people in a profession where you have some really excellent ones, you have some really horrendous ones, and most people are in the middle. When you look at women who stay in engineering, we're up towards the upper end. We do well, we work hard, we bring all that to the table, and we bring that diverse perspective. So from a business point of view, from an economic point of view, from a human point of view, we need more women in engineering. We need to start young. We need to start talking to girls in like primary school, because by the time they're 8, they've already started doubting themselves and it's too late. So forcing that through, getting that message across. And, ideally gender just won't come into this eventually, but right now it does, and it is, and we need to address that.
Right, guys. I suppose, look, I'm going to keep it sweet. What I'd like to see happen is that there's no more need for these kind of events, that we don't have to go down this route, that we don't have to keep on pushing it. I'd love for my children, my girls, to get to the point where there's not a big push to do a Women in Engineering Day because they're already there. So that's where I want to see things going. Thanks. Rosa, keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, I'll keep it short as well. So I think everyone covered mostly, but I want to see it everywhere, like around the world. And there's less stigma going on. And I wish that's it. Like women are not scared to jump into it. And like, I want my friends to not be afraid, or like my cousins or whatever, not to be afraid to jump into it just because of the stigma. And like, like Amy said, like, so we don't have to worry. No, there's not much don't have to be initiatives like this, because it's already, I think everyone covered like what Amy said. Basically what she said is what I wanted to say, basically. So yeah, that's all.